What's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3TR, and I'm here to share with you my official movie review for the newest entry in the library of really shitty video game based movies. This one being titled Hitman Agent 47. Now, this movie was directed by Alexander Bach and stars the really somewhat underwhelming cast of Rupert Friend and Zachary Quinto. Now, the plot to this movie is basically a very watered-down, underrated, badly written version of Terminator, in which you have Rupert Friend playing the character of Agent 47, and he has to track down this woman who has mysterious connections to this organization that helped create him, and Zachary Quinto is playing another agent that's trying to protect her, but if you haven't already seen the trailers, you know that the roles are switched, and so Agent 47 ends up having to actually protect her and wants her help in order to take this syndicate down, and Zachary Quinto just wants to use her in order to create more agents so he can make an army of these guys so he can do some not very good things for the world. Now, as you can tell, I'm not very excited about reviewing this one because it was actually pretty terrible. Because I have to ask, what in God's name made Fox think that we want a sequel to this? Now look, I'll go on record and say that I didn't think this was the worst of its kind, but it wasn't really good enough to say I want to see them go a second time with this source material, because it didn't really do all that much to begin with. And this movie kind of follows the same trail. However, in another number of serious aspects, it's actually somewhat worse. Now, I'll go over what I thought was actually good about this movie. Rupert Friend's portrayal of Agent 47 I thought was spot on. He plays the character of Agent 47 of being this emotionless killer who's very efficient and really good at what he does pretty well. And he's actually pretty, I would say, pretty good in his action scenes all throughout the movie. So that section did work. And another thing I also thought was work was the action scenes themselves. This is a very stylized and good looking film. Despite the fact that a number of action scenes use some really outdated CGI, which looks like it came off the PlayStation 2 era, can be a little bit distracting at first, but I guess if you turn your brain off, you could somewhat enjoy it. Now that we got the good stuff out of the way, let's get into the bad stuff out of the way. Now, this movie is all over the damn place. The plot is completely convoluted, and it really has a hard time even making sense of itself. I mean, there are several scenes about this movie where the characters have to stop because they're in the middle of an action scene and actually spout out a couple of minutes of exposition in order to keep the plot going. And when you do that, you kind of just don't care about anything or any character because you know everything is going to work out for the best in the end. Another thing that really doesn't work about this movie is the dialogue. The dialogue is absolutely terrible, to the point where I'm wondering who the hell wrote this. I'm sure it's someone who really doesn't know how to write movies, and I don't feel like looking it up because this felt like it was written by a 13-year-old who was watching old 90s movies and thought some of these lines sounded badass, so let's add them into this movie. And there's a number of techno-babble that's just kind of thrown in involving genetics and enhancements and all this stuff that I don't really care about because I just want to be entertained, and the movie is failing at that. Another thing that this movie fails at is that some of the acting is just bland. I mean, don't get me wrong. Rupert Friend's Agent 47 is supposed to kind of be emotionless and boring because that's his character. But it seems like every other actor in this, and actress I should say in this movie, is just kind of throwing their performance in because I guess they're in a movie that's going to be released in theaters and they've got some spare time and are just kind of doing it for a paycheck. And I know Zachary Quinto is a very good actor and he could do so much better than this, so I really have to wonder why he wanted to be in this movie because he does not feel intimidating or threatening at all. In fact, it's actually kind of laughable to just hear him kind of spout out some of these really terrible dialogue scenes. Another thing that also just really doesn't work is how a number of certain scenes were actually shot, which it was just kind of, it seemed like there were some really bad cuts from one scene to another, and it was somewhat distracting. It was like they were trying to shoot one scene, but I guess it took so long to actually get it right that by the time you get to the next scene, it felt like it was during another time of the day. It's actually quite distracting if you actually are unlucky to actually see this film in theaters. Ultimately, this movie just kind of fits in the category of why was this even released in theaters? I mean, it's clearly, in terms of quality, in my opinion, was not good enough to be released in theaters, but I would say it's at least a step above your stereotypical straight-to-television sci-fi channel bullshit CGI just crap fest that we get every year. It kind of fits into that. Maybe if this had just been direct to DVD, I could have given it some points for at least it acknowledging what it is. But the fact that it had the balls to want to be released in theaters just makes me want to hate it even more. However, I will say I didn't hate it completely because I actually ended up not having to actually pay for this movie with my own hard-earned money. And I did happen to waste a good hour of my house right before I had to go to work, so I actually had something to think about while I was working yesterday. So if I had to give this movie a rating, I'm going to give Hitman Agent 47 a D-. Please avoid this movie. Hopefully it will bomb and Century Fox will stop trying to turn video games into movies. It doesn't work, and I don't really have high hopes for World of Warcraft or Assassin's Creed when those movies release next year. If you like this movie review / rant, feel free to like, comment down below, and please subscribe to my future movie reviews. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.